Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We're not going to take calls today. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Rich Scheben's with us in the front of the classroom in Montana. I'm Vin Finelli. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vince. And before I start bringing up cars, I just want to see how you've been doing.
Well, it's interesting since you mentioned cars. I was telling Jason, this is a pretty interesting story. I'm sure our class, those who are in regular attendance, have heard me talking about Orscheln, the farm and home store, farm and ranch home, and Citgo, how they intentionally sold tractor hydraulic fluid that was not suitable for its intended labeled purpose on the buckets. So tractor hydraulic fluid is the lubricant that lubricates the transmissions of tractors. I'm talking about a manual transmission, like an 8-speed or 15-speed transmission. And in the hydraulics, like the front-end loader, the 3-point lift, and then when you use it with your implements, let's say you have a Batwing Mower, and we do. It's one of those 15-foot wide mowers. You see them on mowing the highways. They have 3 sections, and it looks like a flying wing, really, pulled behind the tractor. And there are hydraulic cylinders and hoses on there, and then there's the power steering hydraulic units and hydraulic pumps, and pretty much all the equipment we have uses hydraulic fluid. So when you hook it up to your tractor, you hook up the implement to your tractor, the hydraulic fluid from the tractor goes into the implement. So when it's substandard and it's really not intended for use as hydraulic fluid, it damages the equipment. So yesterday, we've been spending months figuring out just how big the damage is. Over $200,000. Literally over $200,000. About $250,000 in damages to the equipment to fix it, to get it back where it was before we put the Orscheln Citgo tractor hydraulic fluid in these machines. Because, and Rich, you've got cars, you've seen oil changes over the years for sure, and your owner's manual says, make sure the oil meets these specifications. And so if you read the bucket from Orscheln, it says it meets these specifications. They show John Deere, they show Case International, they show, International Harvester, Ford, Massey Ferguson, Deutz, the whole list of equipment, and it's suitable for that. And it actually is literally, oil or fluid that they flush out the refinery lines. So when they have sludge in the lines, they send this fluid down to kind of rinse out the lines. So all the tar and deposits that are in the line get flushed out with this oil for the next refining operation. And so they didn't know what to do with it. I'm just surmising. So they put it in buckets, labeled it tractor hydraulic fluid, didn't put any additives in it, and sold it. And it destroyed equipment all over the country. And so ours is we have all the receipts. We have the old oil, we have the new oil, we have the clogged filters, we have the smoking guns, safely stored away. Off-site, and we're going after them, and we're going after them in a big way. And Orscheln, I think, decided that they'd settle, like let's say, I don't know the exact number, but let's say you paid $30 for a 5-gallon bucket of this fluid, and they came out with something like, okay, we'll give you $45 per bucket. It's ridiculous. That doesn't even take into account the damage So, when we talk about cars, the reason I'm mentioning this, Rich Scheben, and going into it at this length, is because we've got protests going all over the country. Now, the farmers haven't gotten involved yet. But when the farmers, when they think about what corporations have done to them, like Orscheln and Citgo, lying, mislabeling, and letting us damage our equipment and paying to damage our own equipment because they intentionally said this is tractor hydraulic fluid when it's not even suitable for oiling the hinges on a gate, literally. Internal memos say that. We've got proof. We've got the proof from Citgo and Orscheln. They know. And the reason I'm involved at this level is because their internal memoranda at the refinery has my name on it saying, what's with this fluid? How come it froths up like a latte? How come this latte-looking stuff comes out the dipstick when we just change the fluid? What gives? And that's how come we're involved, because the lawyers found out about that. They found Vincent Finelli in the depths of the memoranda at Citgo. So it's a real serious problem, Rich Scheben. And when the farmers get involved and they realize how they've been hosed and had and taken, when they rise up, now we'll have a real problem. Or then we'll have a real problem. Because right now the rioters and the protesters are wearing flip-flops. Wait till they start wearing farm attire. The whole game's going to change. Any comments?
Well, it goes back to a lot of things that we've talked about over the years. It's just like we have to keep our eye on the ball because there's a lot of distractions, a lot of dumbing down out there, and especially a lot of divide and conquer strategies that we talk about on a very, very regular basis. We got to look at the agenda that the powers that be want. The same thing with this COVID-19 virus. Same thing with reparations and universal basic income and welfare. When you lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job, everything changes and everything becomes in question. That includes production, producing a certain product or service, value, money, currency, rule of law, the delegitimization of work. So, the quality of everything is going to come down. The definition of inflation, deflation, bonds, debt. Basically, if we, there's a couple articles right here. When reparations for slavery become another welfare program, and the next article is Germany launches universal basic income experiment. When these things happen, these experiments question everything. The, price to earnings, price to sales, GDP, the definition of liquidity and solvency, again, inflation and deflation, free market, supply and demand, lack of velocity of money, what does profit mean? See, when you have questions about all this, it interrupts the quality, the product chains, the reactions, and then the government comes in with more forced authority where the little guy has no representation. It continues to delegitimize work, crashes the economy more, and then they start controlling us with centralized cryptocurrencies, saying cash is dirty, you can't have anonymity, you can't have peaceful assembly, and technology is going to control everything and continue to take more jobs because technology today, especially robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, and the technocracy that we've talked about many times on this show is deflationary. Okay, same with people. Debt is deflationary. People losing jobs is deflationary. But now we have on the other side of the spectrum where the powers that be are printing money like crazy, and it puts question to the value of commerce, currency, and money. And that all goes into, making lesser products and services and creating more forced obsolescence. And, everything from social distancing, this is all made to create us to be more submissive, to break our will, to eliminate legitimacy of voting, to rig the system through a virtual reality system or a vote by mail, eliminating the Constitution, freedom and liberties and rule of law. It's going to create food shortages. It's for an agenda of depopulation, eliminating free speech, and forcing vaccines on us to reduce our immune system, more forced lockdown, which Joe Biden's calling for, and a construction of 5G towers. Basically, when you delegitimize work and products and services continue to lose any value, then people throw their hands up and they say, well, why work? Or why do this? Or why do that? And we're heading in the wrong direction. We're really devolving as a country. And this is why, we have shows like us, because here on USA Prepares, we fight for everybody. We don't care what your skin pigmentation is. We don't care about anything. We care about, I personally judge people by hard work, effort, proven results, qualifications, and the willingness to help others. And this is why I always talk about the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody. This is a time that we can't sit on the sidelines. We can't make living in America being a spectator sport. It's either you sit on the sidelines or you be an American. And that's just listening to like the RNC convention, the Democrats come on the mainstream media, which they own, and all they do is they don't talk about ideas and solutions for the people. President Trump, he's been surrounded by traitors and cowards, and he's done a lot of things that he said he would do when he was campaigning 4 years ago. So he honored his word as much as he could. But the Democrats, basically they want to create a new Trivial Pursuit game where all the answers to the game is controversial, racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, anti-this, ism that, is that, and buy a new card if you're offended. We can't live under these conditions. So this is why we do the reading and research that we do. And this needs to be verified, but I got an email this morning, and I don't know if it's true. It needs to be verified. But the World Health Organization was saying, apparently, that they were wrong on certain scientific data, and we're no longer in a pandemic. And they were saying how asymptomatic people are not contagious. So this is why we go over a lot of COVID-19 information, because the powers that be want to use this to social distance, want to use this to make us submissive. It's all part of the agenda. They want to destroy the economy. So we have to play chess and look 4 or 5 moves ahead and see what they're doing, because everything that you just discussed with the fluid on the tractor to everything is connected, Vince. And this is why we need to connect the dots. We need to play chess and look 4, 5, 6 moves ahead, because that's what the enemy is doing. They want to destroy America. They want to take us down. They want to delegitimize work. They want to divide and conquer the people. And this is why I've connected a lot of dots of corruption and manipulation on how we've given welfare to the rich. And the inequality has gone from the bottom 93% to the top 1%, dropping loaves of bread along the way for that top 7%. And I've mentioned printing money out of thin air and fractional reserve lending, which is irrelevant now, and stock buybacks and all this stuff. So this is where we are at.
All right, we'll be right back with, it's a mess. We'll be right back with Rich Scheben. He's live in Montana. Rich Scheben, I was thinking that in all my spare time, I should continue my education. I was thinking maybe I should get a DBA. A DBA is a Doctorate of Business Administration. That would be the next level after Master's in Business Administration. And I was thinking that, I was just wondering if Liberty University has some openings in their educational programs, their degree programs, since since they've been making the news lately. Have you been following this Liberty University scandal, Rich Scheben?
You mean with Jerry Falwell?
Well, yeah, and his wife, yeah.
Yeah, I read some. I read about the so-called alleged affair and all that stuff. And you know what? This is I mean, the marriage was so divided. The marriage rate in America is 6.5 people per 1,000. And I try not to judge what goes on behind closed doors because there's so much information you don't get. I've had, you know, and I'm not trying to downgrade the scandal, okay? I'm just saying that there's a lot of information that we don't know what goes on behind those closed doors. And, like, for example, I've had, I don't know why, but a lot of people have come to me, especially a lot of women, and they'd say, oh, my boyfriend's this or my husband did that, and they get a divorce or they split up. And, you know, it's none of anybody's business, but, you know, they're just open about it. And then, you know, once in a while I'll meet the guy and I'll ask him some questions, and not to be forward or to get, you know, create rumor, gossip, and hearsay and second and third hand information, but just to have a conversation. And when you hear it from the horse's mouth from the other side, it's a 180-degree different story. So this is why I try to concentrate on things that are affecting our nation as a whole. It's not that I don't talk about the micro instances, but the macro instances is very important right now. You know, like, for example, I was talking about the agenda. Okay, social distancing is one of the agenda. Well, one of the signs says, look away when passing other people. Okay, basically this is another tool to make people submissive, another tool to lessen communication skills, another tool to not discuss what's going on. And I'll give an analogy here. It's kind of like HIPAA regulations. Okay, HIPAA wasn't designed to create patient confidentiality. It was designed to hide the inequality and inadequacies and the corruption behind the medical industry, so people wouldn't have discussions on what's going on. And this social distancing agenda is exactly what this is. So basically, the people who are saying things in certain institutions don't have accountability. Here's another great example right here. After publishing the now retracted fake science study bashing hydroxychloroquine, discredited science journal The Lancet endorses Joe Biden as a healthy choice for America. You can't make this stuff up. So basically what we're saying is that we need to hold people accountable. This is why we always say the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody. Because the agenda is to discredit the people, to not put power back to the people, which is what Donald Trump said he was going to do. And it's pretty obvious. This is why I talk about the agenda on a pretty regular basis, because when you have social distancing signs saying look away when passing other people, that means they want to turn you into zombies, okay? And the last thing we need is zombies. We need communication. We need patriots. We need heroes who are willing to say it like it is, like whistleblowers. We need guts. We need patriots. That's what we need right now. Vince?
Well, the reason I mentioned the DBA, Doctorate of Business Administration, I was just kidding about that. I really don't have any spare time. And I don't have any interest in pursuing it. But I was just kidding about, Liberty University, because I used to drive by it when I lived in Virginia. It's in Lynchburg, Virginia. And I was reading the Code of Conduct, and it says, acts of dishonesty are a violation of the Code of Conduct. And Jerry Falwell, Jr. violated the Code of Conduct. And that ties to what you say, rules, laws, and accountability for everybody. So, Rich, the whole reason I mentioned Liberty University is because I used to drive by there. It's just in Lynchburg, Virginia. And so from our farm, if you went 70 miles one direction, you get to Charlottesville. 70 miles another direction, you get to Richmond. And 70 miles another direction, you get to Lynchburg. And those were the big places where you'd get, the things that you needed, the big cities. And I used to drive by, and Jerry Falwell, the father, not the son, lived on a highway and you could see his house right from the highways, pretty close to the road. And you could see his airstrip. He had an airstrip right at his property. So, you know, there are people who are thinking that they're doing a great thing, supporting religion because he was a preacher. And Liberty University is a Christian school. And yet, what we're seeing is that people that we look up to or used to look up to don't have the values that we thought they had. And that's why I mentioned I was thinking about going for a DBA. I certainly wouldn't go there. And even though they do have an online doctorate in business, they have other PhD programs as well. But I wouldn't consider it. And I was just kind of kidding because I would think that with the COVID-19 situation, that distance learning is becoming more and more in vogue, and less class time is available for the students, but yet the schools don't want to reduce the tuition prices. Kind of ridiculous what's happening. And I don't know how a school can justify charging the same amount for tuition when you're not in class as much as you used to be. And I guess what they're trying to do is to cover the costs of the buildings letting students come in 3 times a week. So, well, we have to heat them all week because they're coming in 3 times a week or twice a week or once a week. Or the students are being fleeced. The parents are being fleeced. The education is substandard everywhere. And here we are with no jobs. So I see, yeah, I agree with that. I see it's going down, and I literally do not see it's coming back for 20 years. I mean, it's just, I have a friend, he called in one day. His name is G, the letter G, and he lives in New York. And he emailed a picture. He just went out into Manhattan, and he just took a picture. Downtown Manhattan. He's just standing there. There's one guy standing for as far as you can see. One guy. That's him. No cars. It's vacant. It looks like somebody put a sign out that said, gone fishing. Or out of business. And I've seen videos on the internet, on YouTube. You know, a guy has a camera driving down Manhattan, and you see boarded up store after store after store after store, like 5 blocks. All boarded up. No traffic. Just driving along. Just him and his camera and boards. So the stores have figured out you have to be nuts to try to sell retail in New York City. And other cities have found the same thing with the protest. That you have to be nuts to want to do business in an area where your business can be burned down multiple times. And that gets us back to move out of the cities. It's as simple as that. If you can. Sell while you still can. Because it doesn't look like it's getting better. And the reports I read, real estate sales are up, they're up, they're up. And then the following week, it's not really, no, they're actually down. And then next week they'll be up again. So people have no idea what to do. So there's a real estate boom? No, there isn't. People are broke. They're absolutely broke. Any thoughts on any of that, Rich?
Well, we've talked about creating self-sufficiency preparedness schools. Remember, a couple weeks ago I talked about a liaison company where we can combine the resources of the old and young, the mentor protege. Remember, instead of doing a reverse mortgage, we can have young people buying property in nature, in acreage from the old people, and they can cross-train and make skill sets, and, everything's negotiable, down payment, interest rates, labor, cash flow, and this way the old can live in their home until they die with a living will, and they still hold the paper, and then the young people get to live on it also and do a little barter as well as a little cash, and when the old people die off, then the young people get to live there, and that would be a great, worthy government grant. But see, the powers that be would rather give the government grants to why lesbians are overweight in America. And yes, that is true, and that was in the millions of dollars. They'd rather give government grants to Big Pharma for certain vaccines that will most likely destroy our immune system. they'd rather put money into appeals court blocking Hillary Clinton's testimony. They don't want, it's all psychological warfare to control the people. They want to be able to have, put money into the military-industrial complex with private contractors and blackmail the people using artificial intelligence to control behavioral profiles and protocols. It's not about creating prosperity for the mass. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here since I did start talking about the COVID-19. Pardon me. I want to go over some articles, and I'm going to start with Virginia, since you mentioned Virginia from Liberty University there. Well, this is something in Virginia that should scare the bejesus, no pun intended, from the past conversation of what is happening right now. Virginia plans mandatory COVID-19 vaccinations for all residents. I want you to think about that, folks. This is very dangerous stuff. We're in medical tyranny with a lot of, Big Pharma owns everything. Well, just for those of you who do watch TV, look at all the commercials. That includes Fox News. That's why even good people like Judge Jeanine and Tucker Carlson and a lot of people don't slam Big Pharma because that's a big part of the paycheck for Fox. Fox is only 5% better than the rest of mainstream media. They're still bought and paid for. They're just bought and paid for by different special interest groups. All right, so I'm going to talk about some articles on COVID-19 here. Sweden's senior epidemiologist, wearing face masks is very dangerous, unquote. Now, we've talked about this, I've quoted epidemiologists, virologists, physicians, scientists. It's just that it all depends on who's bought and paid for to deliver the certain narrative. That's all anything is anymore. There's no legitimacy in the system. Next article, renowned EU scientist. COVID-19 was engineered in China lab. Effective vaccine unlikely. Of course, if it's a geoengineered man-made product, bioweapon, and it mutates, even though the mortality is not as high as the flu, it's still going to be almost impossible to create immunity from it through a vaccine. Basically, what it's going to do, the only immunity that people have over time is to create their own antibodies through their immune system. And that's why we talk often about nutrition. We talk about immune stimulants. We don't do this just to brag about what we know. This is common sense, this is logic, and this is backed up by scientific data before science was so bought and paid for as it is today. Next article, party at Ground Zero. Wuhan Water Park hosts massive concert with no social distancing or masks. Imagine my shock. Melbourne authorities to use surveillance drones to catch people not wearing masks. It's about the agenda. It's about controlling the people. It's about making them submissive. It's about breaking their will. Melbourne is a beta test for the world. So you either speak up for freedom and liberty and the rule of law and the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, or you'll have none of it. Next article. Most UK coronavirus transmissions happens in the home, Health Secretary admits. When we're not out getting vitamin D, we're not out socializing with other people to build antibodies. This lockdown, when you look at depression, the increased depression has doubled in a lot of countries, at least. When you look at the psychotropic drugs, antidepressant drugs, it's going through the roof. And the only people who are benefiting is Big Pharma. Imagine my shock. Next article. Depression in UK doubles during CCP virus pandemic. And of course, CCP is the Chinese Communist Party. Next article. Fewer than 25 people test positive for COVID after massive Sturgis rally. and just keep in mind all the false negatives that there were. Oops. Next article, 77 players, NFL players, test positive for COVID. All 77 were false positives. Do you remember, folks, when I was quoting I think it was the Tasmanian president, somewhere down in Africa, he swabbed fruit like papaya and a goat, and they came back as positive. You know, you can't even make this stuff up. The whole system is non-legitimate because the people in the highest institutions, including our own country, has been bought and paid for, bribed, blackmailed, intimidated, threatened. All the types of conformity that we've talked about over the years is happening live. Next article. People everywhere are dying because the corrupt FDA won't let them have hydroxychloroquine. Well, I just proved my last sentence point just a few seconds ago. Next article. This is almost hilarious. It's so unreal. COVID humiliation. Service industry workers in the state of Maine now have to wear dog cones because of the coronavirus. And they got pictures. And if there wasn't proof, I wouldn't believe these articles. That's how far-fetched things have gotten. That's how 1984 Orwellian Twilight Zone things have gotten. Next article. I mentioned this earlier. Biden, I would shut down the country again if recommended by scientists. Unquote. Yeah, scientists who are bought and paid for. Next article. Big Pharma exposed. Study of 3 top medical journals reveals that many medications, medical products, and services are completely ineffective. Pardon me. And I've mentioned from articles from the New England Journal of Medicine and other articles where I remember quoting this years ago, and I'm paraphrasing it now, where 1/3 of drugs are not efficacious at all. And then if you read the contraindications, the side effect profile, the adverse events, nobody in their right mind would ever take a drug. And I'll be back with a few more articles right after this, folks. Thank you for being here.
Rich Scheben's with us, and, Rich, you're talking about masks and how dangerous they are. Norm Shealy said it way before it became discussed more widely. I mean, he was early on, and so was Gwyneth Isaacs, and so were you. So, I think USA Prepares is way ahead of the curve, way ahead. But so can we go back to why lesbians are overweight?
You know what? Can we save that for the comedy hour? I just have a few more things I'd like to discuss in a short period.
I just want to tell you, I looked it up. And we literally, as you said, we spent money on it. Health and Human Services, Department of HHS, is it's on their website. It's on their website.
Yeah. And I quoted that in the book, and it's gotten to the point, and I've mentioned a lot of these so-called grants over the years and how pathetic they are, and basically they're feathering the nest of certain agendas and not benefiting the people at all.
How about just a quick exclamation point?
Okay, go
so
ahead.
The government is willing to spend money on determining why lesbians are overweight, but not willing to work with us and solve one of our domestic security problems, food security. Okay? We literally have the know-how here at USA Prepares to teach people how to keep their farms. We know how to do it, and we can share that. And we don't need millions and millions and millions of dollars to do it. We could get it going on a shoestring. But I don't think the Trump administration is listening to us.
Well, because the powers that be want to depopulate the earth, and they don't want prosperity, and they definitely don't want self-sufficiency. And we've talked about this in great detail. But I think this is, at this point in time, I think this would be the number one grant that should receive priority. And I've talked about, I got a chapter in the book about self-sufficiency preparedness schools. I went over it, I go over it on a regular, semi-regular basis, off-grid living and creating alternative energy and raising animals and gardening and growing greenhouses and raised bed and nutrition in soil and maybe a little hunting and fishing, maybe butchering, all the things that we do. See, everything that we talk about and suggest, 95% of it we do. And I think it's a really great idea, but, the powers that be, they're more about talk. It's just like all these poor children that have been abused with pedophilia. How come these thousands of names that have been on Epstein Island isn't coming forth? How come all these people who have done atrocities on Anthony Weiner's computer why aren't there indictments and arrests? See, this is why when I talk about, you mentioned about Jerry Falwell, and I'm going off into a tangent, and I'm going to need the microphone again in the beginning of the next hour because I don't want to lose my train of thought here. But there's so much hypocrisy and double standards. We're all imperfect sinners, every one of us. But I do not judge what goes on behind closed doors because none of us get the full picture. You go to the one person and then you go to the next person, you'll get a 180-degree difference. But, when you talk about, Liberty Fellowship and the hypocrisy and double standards behind it, this is why, regarding religion, I say I don't know. I don't think it's nefarious or evil to say I don't know. But when you look at the divorce rate, which is really 70 to 75%, you look at the marriage rate, 6.5 people per 1,000. I remember on television when I used to have it, Christian women were coming out for decades and saying, this is my starter marriage, basically implying that it's basically their marriage until they're tired of being married to that guy and then go marry somebody else. I see a lot less forgiveness and a lot more people made to feel guilty and judging others. I see 501(c)(3) churches. I see the rule of law gone, restitution rights gone. I see welfare for the rich being more prevalent. I see cardinals and priests and bishops doing little boys and girls, while the Pope is saying there's no, the church is no place for homosexuals. I see young and old being abused, pedophilia by the thousands, and no arrest. I just see, I see the elite, instead of helping us with a self-sufficiency preparedness school for the people, they're buying 10,000-acre ranches and building bunkers and living on islands and yachts. And, I see pastors with private jets. And, it's really hard to condone the so-called phony benevolence, phony nobility, phony philanthropy, when I don't see people practicing what they preach.
Yeah,
so folks,
and
we'll be back after the break, and I'll go back on track to the COVID-19 stuff. Thank you for being here.
Rich, but those pastors, they need those jets. They can get 30,000 feet closer to God with those jets.
Yeah. That's called rationalizing and justifying.
Yeah, y'all just keep donating to those not-for-profit corporations. Class, don't donate to anything. Literally, don't donate to anything. Just help your friends, your family, your neighbors. Give what you can to people close to you. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Just a quick comment. We're finding it very difficult to find people behind the counter that know what they're doing in the parts departments. And this is automobile parts departments, farm equipment parts departments. We're finding that the people behind the counter know less and less about more and more every day. I'm not kidding. So I just happened to look up how much does it cost to replace the struts on a Mercedes-Benz E350. That's a mid-size Mercedes. Up to $5,953. That's to replace the shock absorbers, class, on a Mercedes. It's absolutely insane. So please consider, if you've got an older vehicle, please consider keeping it, because what you're going to find out is that the cost of ownership that Rich Scheben talks about all the time is getting higher and higher and higher. And people buy new cars because they don't want problems with their old ones. Their old ones are nothing compared to the problems that you're going to have with the new ones. Absolutely. You need a computer to add refrigerant to the air conditioning of a recent Mercedes-Benz. So I'm saying like within the last 15 years or 16 years, if you want to add Freon and to tell the air conditioning system, okay, you can work now, please. You need a computer to do that. I am not kidding. So, Rich, please continue.
Well, thank you, Vince. Yeah, I just want to mention a few other things about COVID-19, and I want to mention a couple of articles here in Montana on what's happening for my friends here in Montana. And the first article here is, it's not Montana yet, but it's titled 55% of Illinois COVID-19 deaths were linked to nursing and retirement homes. Now, we've mentioned quite a few of these articles over time where these blue Democrat states are literally sacrificing their older people. And it seems to be happening mostly, if not all, in these Democrat states. Now, we talk about the people who are most susceptible, the people 75 years of age and older, people who have comorbidities, people who are obese, people who have diabetes, etc., heart disease. But it looks like to me, and I've paraphrased many authors who write these articles regarding that these Democrat blue states are literally creating collateral damage for the purposes of getting the COVID-19 deaths up so there can be closures, lockdowns, etc. And this is why, again, at the beginning of the show, I've mentioned all the agendas behind the scenes. Remember, or you've heard me say this, and I hold to it, is that the COVID-19 is 1% virus and 99% agenda-driven, and this is very scary. And speaking of COVID-19, this is a article from Tulsa. It was on OAN. Basically, to make a long story short, a group of business owners and doctors based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, announced a lawsuit against the city's mayor, city council, and the head of its health department. The suit seeks the immediate repeal of mask mandates, which the plaintiffs said are harming the health of the city's residents. See, it's not just hypoxia. When you're walking around in a mask, folks, you're creating a petri dish, especially during the hot summer. You're creating bacteria. You know, bacteria and viruses run together. They compromise your immune system so you can get a secondary infection in another one. You know, so this is what you should read the comments on these exactly, and everyone should be suing the government. Great, every city in the world. Can you hold it for just a second? I just want to put an exclamation point on what you just said. This is absolutely critical, class. What Rich Scheben is saying is absolutely right. There are people who use these nebulizers because they have respiratory illnesses, and what they are is they're a pump, an air pump, a low volume, high pressure air pump, and it pumps air through a clear plastic hose into an atomizer. And a person with a respiratory illness that uses this as a treatment will inhale some kind of a liquid. Sometimes it's albuterol, sometimes it's something else. They are told by their doctor to wash that thing out after every use. Now think about that. So they use this thing for a couple of minutes, and then they're told they have to sterilize it because they put it in their mouth, and they would be rebreathing through that the bacteria that has grown because of the exhalations into the nebulizer device, the atomizer, if you will. So what Rich is saying is absolutely, positively right, and I just gave you the proof, okay? And if you look at some of the images on the internet of people with masks, they have red faces. It looks like they went headfirst into a poison ivy patch. No kidding. Yeah. As a result of rebreathing from their masks and the petri dish and the fungi and the bacteria that loves that moist,
humid air. It's a real problem. Mm-hmm. Please continue, Rich. I just couldn't wait.
No, that's a good exclamation point, Vince. And I mean, you see when you go into the stores, even in Montana, you see people wearing these different. Some are wearing handkerchiefs, some are sticking their shirt over their nose, some are, you can't tell me that there's a different, efficacy or functionality based on your mask. And it's been proven that these viruses are so small in micron size, they go through the holes anyway. This is, again, a tool to make people submissive. Now, I have a feel-good story I'd like to mention here, folks, and it's about a local proprietor, and her name is Heather Handy. Her and her husband, Jacob, own a store called Heaven's Peaks Organics, and it's here in Eureka, Montana. And this young lady stands for courage, she stands for liberty, and she really should be considered a local Montana hero because she has the guts to stand up for what's right. And this is regarding the context of our discussion regarding the masks that we're talking about right now. She was threatened to have jail time by official authorities. And I just want to make it clear that I suggested to her that I tell her story over the air, and she did not come to me. This isn't meant to be necessarily a disclaimer for her, but I just feel because she cares about her community, she cares about what's right, she cares about truth, and she cares about her family. She has 3 little kids, and she's, her and her husband Jacob are very concerned about the future of America. And she should be, they should be, because we're in uncharted territory right now with all the bought and paid for establishments at the highest level. So the official authorities threatened to put her in jail if she didn't put up this sign of mandatory masks before they enter her store. And again, this is Heaven's Peak Organics in Eureka, Montana. And, I really think this lady is a hero. She's not big. She's healthy. She practices what she preaches with this organic store. She has a great client base, and the powers that be tried to intimidate her, threaten her, shame her, all these things of conformity that I talked to you about before. And I'm going to quote from some of the information that was transacted to her from the official authorities. And I'm going to quote from the page. There are obviously other measures not stated in the order that are available to the businesses as well. For example, call the police, call the health department, okay? Call the individual family and ask for assistance in getting them to comply. This is intimidation. This is shaming. And then it says right after this, simply stated, and I'm quoting here, I'm reading from the official authority communication that she received. Simply stated, there is no required measure for businesses to enforce the mandate imposed upon the businesses in Section 2A. Each business can choose a reasonable measure of enforcement that works best for them. The key is that the mandate, as stated in Section 2A, continues to apply to the business, so they shall, which means may or may not, require all employees, contractors, volunteers, and customers or other members of the public to wear a face covering. You see how they take words and they make it, they change the meanings, or they make it ambiguous or irrelevant, like you putting in the word shall. Okay, that's not an absolute legal term. So basically, again, I want to read the most important sentence. Simply stated, there's no required measure for businesses to enforce the mandate imposed upon the business in Section 2A. So it's so important to realize that she went through hell for her and her customers' freedom, liberty. This shows guts. They threatened putting her in jail. And she showed up with all these articles from her research, showing how masks are irrelevant, and then they come back with after all these threats in Montana, that there's no required measure for business to enforce mandate imposed upon the business in Section 2A, and they're using words like shall, which means may or may not. So for those of you who live in northwest Montana, come and visit Heather Handy, Heaven's Peaks Organics, in Eureka, and congratulate her for sticking up for the people, for doing the reading and research it takes and the guts it takes to say no to lowering the bars of standards and expectations when these masks, obviously, we've given dozens of articles that show they don't do any good. If anything, they do the opposite. Now, speaking of Montana, I want to mention a couple articles here about Steve Bullock, who's running against Daines for Congress, or Senate, pardon me. And I'm trying to reach that article right now. But it's titled, the first article here is, They Can't Win If They Don't Cheat. I'm just going to read a couple of pieces from this article. And state Democrats succeed in kicking the Green Party off the ballot in Montana this week, with the Supreme Court ruling that must be dropped. The decision could impact the tight U.S. Senate race between Republican Senator Steve Daines and sitting Democrat Governor Steve Bullock. Steve Bullock, I just read an article last week, folks. Basically, his brother got $15 million of funds from Montana thanks to Steve Bullock. I'm going to mention the other article on the flip side. Folks, we need to be aware of the corruption behind the scenes. Well, folks, the next article is about, again, Montana Governor Steve Bullock, who's a Democrat. And I'm just going to read what this article said, because I have so many more articles I want to get to, and I'm not going to be able to do it. But it was reported, and I don't write these articles. These are all published articles in the public domain. It was reported that Steve Bullock, governor of Montana, pitched wealthy Chinese to invest in Montana through the EB-5 visa program, which has been criticized for not producing jobs and being rampant with fraud. Now, this is why I mentioned this local hero. This lady, Heather Handy, who owns Heaven Peak Organics, she barely, probably a little over 100 pounds wet, and she was threatened jail. She has 3 little kids, and her husband, Jacob, is a very good builder, and their livelihood was threatened by official authorities. And then, as it turns out, at the very end, they admit that they don't have any legal right to require masks. And, then you have politicians like Steve Bullock giving his brother access to $15 million of Montana money, or, creating visa programs with the Chinese that's been noted for fraud. This is unacceptable, folks. And we need to stand up for what's right and a little common sense here. Vince, if it's okay with you, unless you have something specific you want to say, I just want to go through some more articles where there's so much in so little time. Okay. Next article. Looks like Vince has stepped away. Hillary gave top job to Ghislaine's young nephew. Ghislaine was Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand person, and that should be, unacceptable. And we can talk about all these for hours. We just don't have time. Next article, California's power grid is failing. Could it be too much reliance on solar and wind? That's part of it. It's also part of the agenda for depopulation. It's part of the agenda to make it hard on people and to collapse the middle class. Next article, poll shows Biden's lackluster standing among Latinos could be costly. Well, that's shocking because Ilhan Omar, Democrat from Minnesota, says that Latinos can no longer compete in a merit-based system. Of course, Latinos aren't going to vote for Joe Biden. Next article, study, 150 times more negative news on Trump than Biden. We've talked about this many times. 93% of what is said about Donald Trump is negative. It's all the propaganda, the hoaxes, the false flags, the lies, and the gaslighting that we talk about and give examples of every week. Next article, California makes it illegal for students to skip anti-racism training. This is real stuff, folks. I'm not making it up. Next article, Iowa University instructor issues warning that not supporting Black Lives Matter is grounds for dismissal. Not making this up. University threatens to suspend students who leave a 4.5-mile COVID bubble. Not making this stuff up. This is published in the articles in the public domain. Next article, Governor Cuomo to exempt celebrities from quarantine to attend the VMAs. I think that's the music awards. But, you know, if you're a celebrity, you get an exemption. See, that's called hypocrisy and double standards. We need practice what you preach laws. Next article, most prolific taxpayers will now flee California as state passes wealth tax targeting high-income earners. You know, boy, I wish I had more time. Next article, a mass exodus away from big cities on both coasts. You think? It's not just coast. It's Illinois. It's Minnesota. It's all of these blue Democrat the states that are destroying supply and demand, free markets, destroying small and medium-sized businesses to create a fascist system where big government and big corporations watch each other's back. Next article, Facebook bans hundreds of QAnon groups, pages, and Instagram accounts. Basically, it doesn't matter who you are, what you are. Nothing matters. If you don't sell the narrative that's given to by the blue Democrat cities, by the George Soroses of the world, by the elite, then you will be banned.
Just a little bit of excitement here at the farm. The internet went down, and we lost connectivity to GCN, so naturally I called in on a landline. We were good. So, Rich, why do you do that? Why do you talk about these topics that cause all these problems?
Because it's called freedom of speech. It's called the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. It's called fighting for freedom and liberty and the rule of law.
Good for you. And class, I just want you to know that when this happens, if I just disappear, it's because something happened to the connection, and Rich Scheben will just take over. And he'll probably say, Vin, you there? You there? Okay. I guess we lost Vin, and he'll just continue with the broadcast. So if you hear that in the future, that's what happened. And I kind of expected that was what was going to happen just now. Mm-hmm. But I was able to reconnect. But it wasn't us. We didn't do it.
You ever think, Vince, that I'm a loss for words regarding preparation?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have so much stuff. In fact, I'm gonna go back to articles, if I may, please. And
sure.
And because I just have so much information. Okay, I was finishing up during the break. I was mentioning this article about Bill de Blasio. Of course, he's the mayor of New York City. His wife has 14 staffers paid $2 million by you, the taxpayer, as New York City deals with budget crisis. You cannot make this stuff up. Next article, what role will cryptocurrencies play during the Great Reset? Well, I'll tell you one thing. If it is a centralized government run, and that means under the guise of the IRS, the Federal Reserve, U.S. Treasury, the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, doesn't matter. It's basically going to be you're pretty much a serf in the caste system, okay? Unless you're willing to sell out the little people by being indoctrinated into breads and circuses, or you're willing to dumb down our children, or you're a proponent of divide and conquer strategies. Next article. The media gaslighting isn't working. Most say protests have become riots. New high in support for police. We better have a new high in support for police, because we're going to go the way of the Nazis and USSR and Stalin and the Bolshevik Revolution. We're going to have some type of law enforcement, but they're going to be bought and paid for, sold to the highest bidder, usually in the category of mercenaries. Next article, BitChute is next. How big tech is coming for alternative platforms that do not censor free speech. You're not supposed to censor free speech. That's why it's called free speech. That's why we've had over 1 million combat soldiers die for our privilege to have free speech, to have freedom and liberty. And I wish the show was longer, but I have to move on. Next article, DNC's virtual crowd was applauding Kamala. Includes 3 duplicated people. You can't make this stuff up. They can't find enough people in the virtual crowd to sit there and applaud, so they had to duplicate people 3 times. This is how they hide things, folks. They want to make sure that people cannot see what the real truth is. They want to get rid of rallies, so we can't see how very few people show up to a Democrat rally. Everything is manufactured for perception purposes. Next article. Obama State Department official destroyed records at Christopher Steele's request. See, it's so hard to get arrests and indictments today because the people at the top are corrupt. We have all this proof that Hillary Clinton and the DNC, the Democrat National Committee, paid for Christopher Steele's P dossier. Everything is made up. Everything is manufactured. Everything. Next article. Mainstream media totally silent when Obama removed thousands of U.S. postal boxes. See, when Barack Obama or the Democrats do it, it doesn't get tagged. There's no light shined on it. But they just make things up. Oh, President Trump's throwing immigrants in the cages when Obama built the cages. You know, everything that they do, they blame on us. And they do it tenfold. And they tell us how to behave when they are given exemptions with different rules, laws, and accountability for themselves. Next article, Herschel Walker blasts Democrat convention. You are playing the race card too much. I believe Herschel Walker has been friends with President Donald Trump for like 37 years, and he just came at the RNC and said how President Trump is not a racist. And President Trump received all these awards from all these activists over the years, basically how he included them in the job and that he's not racist. You know, it's unbelievable. Hillary says Trump poses clear and present dangers to our freedom. Hillary Clinton, who sold 20% of our uranium to Russia. I mean, these articles are getting so stupid, I can barely pronounce the titles. Bette Midler, pardon me. My eyes are going, folks. Bette Midler says, F you, Trump. You know the F word that rhymes with duck? You'll never get close to Joe Biden's DNC speech. CNN's Tapper says, one of the best speeches Biden ever delivered. See, folks, they don't care about what you deliver in policy or deliver to the people regarding equality, fairness, tolerance, and diversity, all the words that really mean something. These words are all hijacked by the Democrat Party in order to take the inequality of the money from the bottom 93% and give it to the top 1%. Jerry Seinfeld says that he defends de Blasio's New York while he lives in an 18,000 square foot mansion, I believe that's what I read, in the Hamptons. See, people who don't practice what they preach, folks, should not get a microphone. This is why we need practice what you preach laws, because hypocrisy and double standards need to come to the forefront. Next article. Ethicist recommends drugging people with morality pills in the water supply to make them wear masks. Well, we just went over the efficacy and functionality of masks. They want to drug you so they can make you submissive, maybe make you sterile, basically, you do what, just like universal basic income. You do what we tell you and we'll give you some money. That's what it's all about. Next article, it's okay for people to loot in person, but not vote in person. You can't make this stuff up. You just can't do it. I mean, a Twilight Zone comedy writer could not come up with some of this stuff. Next article, climate change alarmist Harrison Ford flies son to college on a private jet. So you're complaining publicly about climate and climate change and global warming, and then you fly your son to college on a private jet. Again, hypocrisy and double standards. UK police raids child's birthday party due to COVID-19 restrictions, but fail to contain Islamic celebrations. This is in the UK. This will never happen in America. Oops. Look at the next article. Democrat Sarah Gideon of the state of Maine shot down legislation. I'm going to say this really slow because you're not going to believe me. Sarah Gideon of Maine shot down legislation to ban female genital mutilation because she called it racist. I hope me pausing in silence said it all. The feminists are saying we must abolish the family to have a feminist future. Folks, I know you think that some of these articles I come up with are made up, but I promise you they're all verified and published in the public domain. I know it seems impossible, but it's true. Next article. Epstein bragged about his Bill Clinton friendship to a 15-year-old girl. Next article. Amazon censors anti-Kamala items, but Amazon allows effing Trump apparel. Again, that F word that rhymes with duck. Can't make this stuff up. I mean, you can really make like sitcoms out of this stuff. Next article. Eyewitness says as many as 20,000 unverified absentee ballots counted in Detroit primary. Oh, yeah. Let's have absentee ballots become legitimate. It will delegitimize voting in America overnight. Vince, I know when I mention some of these articles, you must be in the background either cringing or trying to hold back laughter.
No, I've read them. No, I've read them. I'm right up with you. I've read these articles.
Is it?
Yeah.
How do you believe that we're living in America right now, Vince?
Well, when I was in high school, none of this would make any sense. When I was at the university, none of this would make any sense. You mentioned Mayor de Blasio of New York City's wife and her staff of 14 people. I'm still stuck on, well, Rich, how much do you pay your speechwriter? So that you can, because, you're on the radio worldwide. How much do you pay your speechwriter?
You're listening to my speechwriter right now. I'm the one that does the reading and research.
I know that. I know that. And when I would travel, the country and get on stage, well, I wrote my own material. Okay, I wrote my own. I know you wrote your own and write your own, and I still write my own. Well, the speechwriter for de Blasio is paid $117,000 a year. Now, she has a senior advisor as well. That's $150,000 for her, for the senior advisor, and then $143,000 for a year for a public relations director. And she has a special assistant that makes $115,000. That's just 4 of them. Mm-hmm. I mean, 115 is the low salary there. That's an enormous salary.
Yeah, well, media propaganda, Hegelian dialectic, subliminal messaging, and professional wordsmithing is in demand. How are they going to come up with all this race baiting and divide and conquer and manage perception, pity, guilt, and ideology in order to sway public opinion?
And if you think about it, class, a speechwriter, okay, at $117,000 a year. That's because the mayor can't think for himself, okay? He doesn't know enough words in order to say what he thinks he should say. So he has someone else tell him what he should say and write the words for him. And then he reads it. Now think about that. So you hire a guy that can't even communicate without hiring another guy to do it for him. That's really what's happening. It's unbelievable that these people can't think for themselves. And yet they have the highest positions in the land. And worse than that, they tell us what to do.
And look at all those poor businesses boarded up.
Yeah. And they've run the ship aground. That's what they've done. Throw them all out. It's outrageous that they can't write their own notes, stand up in front of a group, and say what they've got to say, and be able to defend it. They just read what someone else wrote, and they have no idea what they've really said, and they have no idea of enacting what they just promised. That's what happens. We're Scheben?
Well, yeah, just like when I talked about the beginning of the show, I talked about like reparations and welfare and UBI, universal income, and basically everything is going to come into question because there's no validity in when you're charging the taxpayers through taxes or inflation to hire a speechwriter just to create words. Again, everything comes in question. Now you have questions about value. You have questions about work legitimacy. You have questions of rule of law. It's basically everything is done to give the perception so they can monitor behaviors. But what we're doing is we're not holding their feet to the fire. We're giving free lunch to the elite by not saying anything. So this is why, silence is deadly at this point. This is why the silent majority needs to speak up and talk about everything that's happening, because there's no legitimacy in anything, no legitimacy in work. When I was told, remember from GlaxoSmithKline, that I couldn't have that job because I wasn't female, despite my record. Vincent, this is the last few minutes of the show. I sent you a few years ago a big, thick stack of my awards, my numbers, my sales quotas, being number one in the nation for a product. Do you remember reading some of that? And can you tell the audience what you thought about my job performance, which at the end meant absolutely nothing?
Plus, I received a stack of is Rich Scheben's dossier from his work experience in the pharmaceutical industry. And it was 8.5 by 11 sheets, and it was praise after praise after praise, exemplary performance. And it was really his report card, an inch thick, actually probably over an inch thick. And I read every page, and I put it back in the envelope and sent it back to him. I read it. I'll tell you what, if you had a person working for you that was like Rich Scheben, you'd be doing really well. And here's why Rich has been on the air so long with me. Not only did he do that before he met me, he continues to do that same kind of work right now. He doesn't get paid for it. He calls me. I call him. We talk off the air, and of course we talk on the air. And we discuss some of the things that are happening, what's our take on it. And he's always prepared, always prepared. And when he's not going to be on the air, I get in advance, like a month in advance, when he is going to be changing his schedule. And he tells me. And he makes sure that I know. And then he makes sure to remind me to make sure that I know. What I'm saying is, if he were an employee, he would be the standard by which all other employees would be judged. No kidding. No kidding. I mean, literally, he's on time. He's prepared. He never says, I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. That never happens. He's always prepared. Always.
Well, I appreciate it.
And I think there's several reasons. Well, it's true. And I think there's several reasons for that. I think that's a work ethic that's ingrained in you. It's in your DNA. It's been nurtured to be the standard at which it is now. And that's the way when guys our age were coming up, we thought that if we worked harder, better, performed better for the team, we would rise within the team. We wanted to do the right thing all the time. We wanted to be the best we could be. And that's what Rich is. He's outstanding. And it's so outstanding that I know that if something happens to me 0.3 of a second before the broadcast and I get knocked off the air, which has happened, I know the broadcast class is going to continue fine and I don't have to worry about it at all. Now think about it like this. Think about you've been working on a project for 10 years. Okay? Do you want to have it destroyed in a second? Do you want that to happen? That's kind of what's happening around Donald Trump. The rug's being pulled out from under him. I don't have to worry about that. Not with Rich Scheben. So those are my comments, Rich.
Well, I appreciate it, Vince. America used to be about making a good life for yourself through hard work, proven results, and qualifications. Now, prosperity. Now it's about your victim group and protectionist group status.
Yeah, it's about me first.
Work has been delegitimized. Thank you for being here, folks. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the kind words, Vince. Wish we had more time.
They're well earned. Plus, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.